It is a bit strange. You're absolutely right. Because, of course, if you're borrowing a dress and you wear the dress once and you send it back, or you get it cleaned and send it back, what's the damage? You know, you don't owe them any money for that, do you?
No, not at all. By definition.
Or do you say, oh, well, that would have been if I'd bought it £700 or £1,500, so I'm going to give you that money. It's a very odd transactional scenario. Also, can you imagine the scene when old Keir's going, "Oh, darling, what do you want? You know that dress that we borrowed? We have to give it back, really, and you can't have any more, right?" I mean, I think things are probably frosty in the old Starmer household.
Absolutely. The way that she's dragged into this as well, you feel sorry for her. But
this is a woman who apparently didn't want to have anything to do with campaigning, right? Suddenly was all over him when he went to America. I mean, I remember people were giving me a hard time because I was giving them a hard time for walking up the steps of that private jet holding hands, you know, and doing all that kind of lovey-dovey stuff that you don't really do when you've been married that long. And, you know, there's clearly something's not right about the whole kind of, you know, blissful domestic scenario, is it?
But it's also that thing where Starmer's always like, I want to keep my family out of this and all the rest of it. First of all...
But now you're going to throw my son under the bus because it was his fault that we had to use the penthouse.
He's the one who brought his son into it. He could easily have said, look, we took it for XYZ reasons.
For family reasons.
You know, because the kids were doing exams. Yeah. He really made it all about his son to try and bait people into criticising him for it, and then he could criticise them. He's dragged his family into this as much as anyone else.
Of course he has. Speaking of which, I've seen on page 2 of The Sun, great picture of Rachel Reeves, who's getting ready to deliver the budget at the end of this month. She's changed her hair colour, and it's now red. I don't know whether that's in tribute to Angela Rayner. I'm going to say something which people might not like. I was given a bit of a hard time because I said when she had dark hair, she looked a bit like Richard III. Right? And she now doesn't look like Richard III, so I wonder if she's done it in order to, you know, change the way she's perceived.
I'm sure she listens to Talk every morning.
I'm sure she does.
That criticism.
She actually looks a lot happier with the red hair, doesn't she?
Yeah,
I mean, she was with the dark hair. She was very stern and kind of, you know, you didn't look like you wanted to talk to her. But now she actually looks quite friendly.
There you go.
There we are. What about Angela Rayner?
Tips to more people.
Indeed, Angela Rayner in the Times here accepted an £836 session at a DJ booth in Ibiza. Keir Starmer and David Lammy were given football tickets. I mean, there's no end to this, is there? It's just going to keep going and going and going.
And also, a lot of people, whether it's in the Labour front bench or people who might end up in the Labour front bench in the near future, they're continuing to take these gifts. Yeah. You can see that in some of the reporting, because a lot of them, whether we like this or don't like it, have kind of come to see it as it's part and parcel of being a prominent politician.
Well, do you know, yesterday I discovered that there's no actual tax law that governs this, right? But apparently MPs, by tradition, have never been taxed on the gifts that they receive. Anybody else, in any other business, any other line of work, would be taxed. And somebody said, I think to Guido yesterday, that if you'd taken £107,000 of freebies, which he's done, Keir Starmer, he would be paying £50,000 in tax if he was a normal, you know, operator with a normal salary and a normal job.
And when you've got a Labour Party been running around saying one law for them, one law for everyone else over everything that the Tory Party did. You know, remember when Rishi Sunak didn't wear a seatbelt and they reported him to the police?
That's right.
Everything became a question of kind of morals and double standards. And now they're reminding the country that when it comes to double standards, MPs in general, but governments in particular, enjoy a lot of them, whether it's the fact that it's the kind of rules around Parliament in terms of the questions of donations, but also rules around, you know, being able to kind of consume cut-price alcohol at the taxpayer's expense. There's these things which people forget about, and when they're reminded about them, they're not happy.
Whenever we have the conversations about, oh, we don't pay our politicians enough, well, sorry, they seem to be getting an awful lot of stuff for free. They get their expenses paid. They get free tickets to things. You know, that counts as quite a big chunk of income for most people, you know. But let's talk about the BBC, because before we move on to other things, Laura Kuenssberg put this tweet out last night. She's supposed to interview Boris Johnson. While prepping to interview Boris Johnson tomorrow, by mistake, I sent our briefing notes to him in a message meant for my team. That obviously means it's not right for the interview to go ahead. It's very frustrating, and there's no point pretending it's anything other than embarrassing and disappointing, as there are plenty of important questions to be asked. But red faces aside, honesty is the best policy. See you on Sunday. I mean, I don't understand why, just because she's blundered and sent him a list of questions that she thought she was going to ask him, she now has to cancel the interview. Why doesn't she just ask him a bunch of different questions?
Well, that's one point, isn't it? Also, it'd be a great kind of ploy, wouldn't it? A great kind of bait. So send him some briefing notes about something completely different, or about how wonderful he is, or whatever, and then really go at him in the interview.
I suspect the briefing notes contain quite a lot of nastiness about Boris Johnson.
I can imagine.
Because it's been written by some intern at the BBC. And isn't Boris Johnson awful? Make sure you ask him about this, or maybe some derogatory statements about Carrie or something.
But I suppose in Kuenssberg's defence, if that had ever come out, not least because she was always subject, when she was political editor, to these accusations, not all of them fair, that she was too close to the Tory party, that she was one of these kind of Tory agents in the BBC. If that had ever come out, that would have been terrible for her.
If I was Boris Johnson, I'd release these notes now. So if you're listening, Boris, you know where we are. Send them on to us, because we'd be delighted to publish them all. But how useless do you have to be at the BBC? You know, to send them to the person you're actually the subject of the interview.
It's not great, is it?
God almighty. There's so many other stories, we haven't really got time to do them. But £1 billion worth of commuter trains stuck in the sidings. That's a good one. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to explain all of that coming up very, very shortly.